My husband looked me in the eye, in the kitchen we built together, and said, "Diane, you're just too old for me now." 28 years of marriage, and that's the sentence he chose. Not, "I don't love you anymore." Not, "I made a mistake." Just, "too old." Like I was a car he was trading in for a newer model. I didn't cry in front of him. I promised myself that much. But 18 months later, when Robert stood across a crowded banquet hall and watched a 4-star general shake my husband's hand and call him, "Sir," I saw the color drain out of his face. Because the quiet, gray-haired man he'd mocked as some retired nobody I'd settled for out of desperation, that man commanded more respect in that room than Robert had earned in his entire career. This is the story of how getting thrown away became the best thing that ever happened to me. My name is Diane Whitfield. I was 54 years old when my life fell apart, and I lived in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, in a brick colonial house with a wraparound porch that I'd planted every flower on myself. I married Robert Ashford when I was 26. He was ambitious, funny, and hungry to prove something to the world. I put him through his MBA working 2 jobs. I raised our 2 kids, Emily and Mark, mostly alone while he traveled for his career in regional sales management. By the time Robert turned 56, he'd become a district director at a mid-sized logistics company. He'd also become someone I barely recognized, obsessed with his gym membership, his haircut, his new sports car. And obsessed, I would later learn, with a 31-year-old marketing coordinator named Kayla Reyes. I didn't see it coming. Maybe I didn't want to. It started small. Robert began working later. He started taking phone calls in the garage with the door shut. He bought new cologne, the kind he never wore for me. The night it ended, I remember every detail like it happened an hour ago. It was a Tuesday in March. I'd made his favorite dinner, pot roast, because our anniversary was coming up. He walked in, didn't take his shoes off like always, and sat down without looking at me. "We need to talk," he said. "Okay," I said. "Talk." "I've been thinking a lot lately," he said. "About us. About where we are in life. And I think we want different things now, Diane. I think you've settled into a certain phase, and I'm not ready for that phase yet." I asked him quietly what phase he meant. "You're 54, he said. "I feel like I have more life left in me. And you've stopped growing. You're just too old for that now, Diane. I'm not ready to accept it yet." Too old. 2 words. After 28 years, 2,000 shared mornings of coffee, 3 grandchildren, a paid-off mortgage, 2 words was all it took to end it. "Is there someone else?" I asked. He hesitated just long enough to answer without saying a word. "Her name is Kayla," he finally said. "She makes me feel young again." "It sounds," I said, my voice shaking, "like you found a way to feel young by making me feel worthless." He didn't argue. He just looked relieved that the hardest part was over. Robert moved out within 10 days, he'd clearly already found an apartment before he even told me. My daughter Emily sat with me every evening. My son Mark wanted to drive over and confront him. I told him not to. The gossip started fast. The hardest moment came at my niece's wedding, 4 months after the divorce was finalized. Robert showed up with Kayla on his arm. She wore a dress that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Robert walked past my table. "You look good, Diane," he said, like it was a compliment. "I feel good," I said, and I meant it more than he realized. That was the moment I decided I would not spend the rest of my life as the woman Robert Ashford left behind. In the months that followed, I asked myself what I actually wanted, instead of what everyone else needed from me. I signed up for a watercolor class at the community center. I was terrible at first. My instructor Carol just laughed and said, "Honey, nobody's good the first time." I started walking 3 miles every morning. Somewhere around week 6, I noticed I wasn't dreading the mornings anymore. Carol was the one who finally convinced me to try dating again. "You don't owe anybody a broken heart forever, Diane," she said. I met Daniel Cole on a dating app my daughter talked me into. His profile picture showed a man in a plain gray sweater. Salt and pepper hair, kind eyes. We met at a diner called Mel's. He stood up the moment he saw me, pulled out my chair, something Robert hadn't done in 15 years. When I told him about the "too old" comment, he said, "Anybody who calls a woman like you too old was never smart enough to deserve you in the first place." Daniel was quiet about his past. "I served for a long time. Government work," he'd say, then change the subject. But I noticed things, how strangers sometimes stood up straighter around him, called him "sir" without knowing why. Once, a stranger at a parade said, "Is that Colonel Cole?" before Daniel gently corrected him and moved the conversation along. "People sometimes mix me up with someone," he told me later. "I was in the service a long time. Made some rank along the way. I'd rather you just know me as Daniel." We married 14 months later, in his backyard, under a maple tree. My son Mark stood up during the toast and said, "Mom, I've never seen you laugh this easy." Married life with Daniel felt entirely different. He made coffee every morning without being asked. He left small notes for me, tucked into books, taped to the mirror, that I kept in a shoebox in our closet. 8 months into our marriage, Daniel got invited to a formal dinner honoring an old colleague. "You'd be welcome to come," he said. I said yes. What I didn't know was that Robert's company had landed a contract with the same sponsoring organization, and Robert and Kayla would be there too. I saw him first, adjusting his tie in the lobby. My stomach dropped. "That's my ex-husband," I told Daniel. "Then let's go say hello," he said. "You've got nothing to be ashamed of." Robert's eyes widened. "And you are?" he asked Daniel, with a hint of condescension. "Daniel Cole. Diane's husband." "Well. Good for you too," Robert said, in that tone that means the opposite. Dinner began. Near the end of the program, a 4-star general stepped to the podium and said, "I also want to acknowledge someone in the room tonight. Seated with us this evening is Major General Daniel Cole, United States Army, retired. General, would you stand, please?" The room erupted into applause. I looked at Daniel, my quiet, gentle Daniel who fixed the fence himself, standing up, nodding with quiet grace. I looked across the hall. Robert's face had gone pale. After the applause, Robert came over, his voice suddenly soft. "Daniel, I had no idea. Major General. Wow. It's just a title, Robert. Doesn't change who I am at the dinner table." "Well, Diane always did have good taste," Robert said, trying to claim leftover credit for my happiness. "Robert," I said, calm and steady. "You told me I was too old. That I needed someone with more spark. Daniel never once needed me to prove I still had spark. That's the difference between a man who loves you, and a man who was just using you as a mirror to feel young." Robert had nothing to say. Kayla tugged his arm. "Can we go?" That night in the car, I sat quietly. "You were always enough, Diane," Daniel said. Robert just wasn't paying attention. I later heard Kayla left him 6 months after that dinner. His company had layoffs. He struggled to find another job in his late 50s. He moved into a small apartment, alone. I didn't feel joy hearing it. Just a quiet peace, life settles its own accounts. I ran into him once more, at the pharmacy, about a year later. He looked older, thinner. "You look happy, Diane," he said, and this time it sounded like an apology. "I think about it sometimes. I was wrong. I threw away something real." "I hope you find your peace too, Robert," I said, and meant it the way you'd wish a stranger well. Then I drove home to a husband who never once made me question my worth. Daniel and I traveled, Montana, a month in Ireland. I took up painting for real. My grandkids called him Grandpa Dan within a year. One evening, my granddaughter climbed into my lap and asked, "Grandma, were you ever sad before you married Grandpa Dan?" "I was sad for a little while," I told her. "But sometimes the saddest moments are just doors closing so better ones can open. You just have to be brave enough to walk through the next one." Daniel wrapped his arm around me as we watched the kids play. "No regrets?" he asked. "None," I said. "Robert taught me what it feels like to be discarded. You taught me what it feels like to be chosen. I'll take chosen, every single time." Being called too old by the wrong man turned out to be the beginning of finally being loved, fully, by the right one. The people who discard you are rarely qualified to judge your worth. If you loved this story, stay close, because next time, we're telling the story of a soldier's widow who was cut out of her father-in-law's will completely, until a letter he left behind revealed a secret that turned her whole family upside down. You will not want to miss it.